Welcome to another episode of Balancing Acts, the show dedicated to helping you build a profitable, resilient company. I'm your host, Linda Hamilton. I'm a CPA, certified exit planning advisor and coach and a systemologist. And I have the pleasure today of speaking with Faizun Kamal, a franchise expert, to help us talk about how you can grow your business or find another path. Let me introduce Faizun. She is an award-winning franchise expert. She's an author, a renowned public speaker. Her book is The Right Franchise for You: How to Escape the 9-to-5 and Generate Wealth and Live Life on Your Terms. She's also named as one of the top 100 influential women in franchising. And she speaks everywhere. And most of all, she is such a warm person, always willing to share her expertise. Thank you, Kamal, for being with us today.
It is wonderful to be here with you, Linda. Thank you.
So I want to talk first about something I like to ask my guests. You're an expert in franchising, but you are also a business owner, a CEO. Tell me something you love about your business.
Oh my gosh. Something I love about my business. It would have to be meeting a new business owner, meeting an entrepreneur who comes to us uh, excited about what they have built and laying out their dream for what they would like to do next by turning that business into a franchise. I cannot tell you, Linda, how exciting that it is for me, um, because we work with entrepreneurs from every industry you can imagine, and I'm always taken aback by just how creative people are in the businesses that they have built from the ground up. That would be one thing I would say excites me.
Oh, I can see that. And I think it's something I love also, which leads us to talk about franchising. And first, we'll approach it from the perspective of investing in a franchise. How did you actually come to be an expert in this industry?
Oh my gosh. To keep a long story short, Linda, I would say I fell headlong, accidentally, magically into the world of franchising after I got laid off from corporate America. So I had been in corporate for about 8 years, and the company had been going through a series of layoffs. And in that particular layoff, my position got eliminated. And didn't realize it at the time, realized it afterward, that not only was that not a blessing in disguise, it was a full on, full out blessing, period. Because that is really what led me to get really intentional about what the next step of my career would look like. What that next thing would be that would allow me to be able to do work that fulfilled me professionally, but that was also very personally meaningful to me. And I found both of that in this world of franchising that I'm in now.
Did you start the franchise pros early on in the beginning? Was that how your approach started, or your inroads into the industry?
Yes, yes. So I started this company at this point 8 years ago, which is when I found the world of franchising, and we began, in fact, by offering our very first service, which is working with people just like who I was, a former corporate executive, people who, for whatever reason, either they had been laid off, like I was, or they were still in corporate and they were looking for an off ramp from corporate in the future. And they wanted to do that by starting a business of their own. So we began our first service by helping these clients find the right franchise opportunity to invest into.
And so how do you evaluate the right opportunity? Because from reading your book, that there are over like what, 3,000 categories of franchises. The first one that comes to mind is fast food. But what else is out there? How do you evaluate it?
So the number in the book is now a little bit dated because the book is about 4 years old. At this point in time, Linda, just in the United States, we have over 5,000
Wow.
franchises all told, right? And you're right. And you address one of the biggest myths in franchising, which is many people who think franchising is really just all about burgers and fries, right? There's nothing more than no, ma'am. There's actually way more than burgers and fries. So absolutely
Yeah.
food is a big industry that we work in. But literally, Linda, as a consumer, as an individual, think of all the products and services that you use in your life, right? So if we were to then start to categorize them, so think of children's services, education, fitness, wellness, beauty, automotive, home services, senior care, right? I could go on and on. These are wonderful examples of industries and categories that we work with. And when we take our client through this what we call the PROS process. This is our signature process. It's a proprietary methodology that we've developed over the years that we use to take a client through from the very beginning, help them line up with the right franchise opportunities that are a fit with them based on their goals, their desires, their objectives. What do you want that franchise to be able to give you? Is it just the money piece? You're looking to recreate a six-figure income? It can be just that. Or it could be, yes, I'd like to make the same kind of money I was making in corporate. But Faizun, at this point in my life and career, could I do something that allows me to spend more time with my family and loved ones? Something that being in a job didn't really give me the freedom to be able to do. So once we understand what your specific goals and needs are, we then use that information to be able to create a customized path, if you will, for who you are and what you're looking for.
Yeah, thank you. And that brings me to think about, I've interviewed other guests who have left corporate America and they wanted to start a business and they actually founded a startup, which is a different path, but they are both businesses. And some refer to franchise as a business in a box. What's the difference between whether you're a startup or whether you want to maybe take a different path and invest in a franchise? How do you evaluate that?
I love that, Linda. At a very high level, the difference between a startup and a franchise would be this. It's not accurate, but I'll just use it because it's a good soundbite. You're a startup. When you become a franchisee, think of it as entrepreneurship light. When you're a startup, you're an entrepreneur. When you choose to invest in a franchise, you're still an entrepreneur, but it's a lighter version of entrepreneurship. What do I mean by that? In a startup, you, the business owner, have to come up with all your systems and processes from scratch. There's nothing out there. You have to begin to do everything from scratch. In a franchised setting, you referred to it. You said it's a business in a box. Well, it's a business in a box because the business already has all the systems and processes that you need. So on day one, you step into the business, you turn the key on, it's a turnkey system, and boom, you're off to the races. That would be the biggest difference between being a startup and being a franchisee or a franchise owner.
That's very interesting. Entrepreneur light. I might look at it another way. I am a systems consultant, a systemologist, and I help business owners document their systems so their IP doesn't walk out the door in the heads of their key employees, because systems are what are going to make your business efficient. You might be in a survival mode before you have all these things ready. And when you invest in a franchise, they've gone through that themselves. They've already gone through the survival stage, right? So they're at that higher level of having the infrastructure, the systems, the business model in place. But now they have to run it. So does that make it easier to run? What is that difference in following these systems?
I like to say, Linda, it's wonderful to learn from your mistakes. It's even better to learn from someone else's,
Yes.
right? And that's what being a franchisee does for you
Yes.
because your franchisor, meaning the business, they have made all the mistakes. They have spent all the money and the time to get the systems and processes to where it is now. What are you as a franchisee doing? You're simply coming in and starting to use them. I'm sorry, remind me the question you asked me just now.
just whether or not there's you're stepping into the systems already working, that you didn't have to start from scratch. And I think you answered it by saying you're really learning from someone else's mistakes. When you're in survival mode, you're struggling finding that
Right.
path and with your business model. So the next, as a lead into that, and we'll also talk about it in the next segment, would be, how do I know whether I should start a startup or whether I should invest in an event? Am I a good fit for a franchise model?
I love that. There are a couple of things, Linda, but I would say the biggest thing that somebody should use to evaluate if they're a good fit for franchise ownership or if they should, put up their shingles and call it a day, would be to ask themselves this one question. Am I a true entrepreneur? Do I love to go out into the wild, into the wilderness, and create everything from scratch? Like, it gives me real joy to be able to do that, right? I don't answer to anyone. I really am my boss. You're a true entrepreneur. A franchisee, and a really good franchisee, is someone who is entrepreneurial in that they can figure a path forward. They are their own boss, but remember, in a franchise system, you are still answerable to your franchisor. Your franchisor gives you that playbook with all the systems and processes and says, hey, Linda, you're now our franchisee. Go out there and do what you need to do. And we're here behind the scenes supporting you in everything that you need. But you are still answerable to them because it is their system that you are implementing. This is a conversation that I have with many people who attend our franchise masterclasses, Linda, where I'll ask the question, many of you who are in this masterclass will say, hey, I'm here because I want to be my own boss. Understand, you are still your own boss, but because you're a part of someone else's system, you are still going to be able to, you still have some level of accountability towards them. If that chafes away at you, at your sense of independence, you may not be a great fit for a franchise. You might choose the startup route. That might be better for you.
Thank you for that. We're going to take a commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk some more about evaluating opportunities and just all the different things you might consider as franchising as a business model. Welcome back to Balancing Acts. We're talking with Faizun Kamal about the franchising industry and what would be a good fit for you if you wanted to consider investing in a franchise as your way of starting a business. Faizun, I kind of want to think about another thing. People come out of corporate and might say, I want to start a job. You mentioned that. And so investing in a franchise is one way. Versus a startup. But what about business owners who maybe already they have a business? They've been in business a year or two. Would they ever consider the path of switching to franchising as well at that point?
I love that, Linda. Absolutely. So it's interesting you asked that because I would say fully more than half of the work we do at this point in time is with clients who are business owners. So these are entrepreneurs, Linda. They have run their business for X years. They are at a certain amount of top line revenue. They might have a small team in place. They might have one or multiple locations of whatever that business is. And they're experiencing a couple of pain points. They know what they offer is amazing, and they want to be able to expand the footprint of the business. They have invested all of their monies into the business that exists right now, and they are fully strapped, but they want to grow. As they look at this, they say, I really want to be able to take my brand nationwide. And I think franchising is the way for me to do that. Can I turn my business into a national franchise brand? We work with clients like that. Obviously, we put them through a vetting process. There are certain things that need to be in place before you become viable as a business that can be turned into a franchise. But yes, absolutely. I would say business owners listening to the show right now, Linda, if you are a business owner who's thought about scaling your business, franchising may well be the scaling strategy for you.
Right. And whether you're already running a business, whether you're a startup, your intent of how you're going to grow, franchising is another growth strategy. But let's step back again. So you can be a franchisee or you can be a franchisor. If we go back to the franchisee, let's clarify for them how they know what kind of a business model. Are all franchise models exactly the same in terms of alignment with, say, my skill set or maybe my, what I'm interested in? How do I know I might be a good fit?
The easy answer is you don't.
Hmm.
This is why it's important when you are embarking on a franchise search, you want to do that with somebody who's traversed this path many times before. I say buying a franchise is not like buying a pair of pants at the mall. The investment is a little bit larger, and the time to really ask the questions, to really understand what is going to be required of you is now before you sign on the dotted lines. It's incredibly important, and you know this in the work that you do. It is incredibly important to do the due diligence in a very robust way. What does that mean? I'll answer the question you asked. How do I know what is the right franchise for me? Well, it's a number of different things, Linda. When a client first comes to us, we don't immediately begin by starting to throw franchise opportunities at them. Absolutely not. It begins with us taking you, the client, through a very specific methodology that first begins with us uncovering and understanding what is Linda about? What are Linda's greatest strengths? What are Linda's blind spots? What are some things that she's not so great at? What are some things that when she thinks about them, her eyes light up, time comes to a standstill, and she's in flow state? When we start to really uncover the nuances of who Linda is, that gives us a much better picture of, Linda, you have been in the marketing industry for the last 25 years, and you have held all these positions in prior jobs. You have led large teams of people. You have hired and you've fired and you've mentored. You've led really large projects. You've managed very large budgets. Now we are starting to put some stakes in the ground for potentially the kinds of businesses that may be a fit based on the skill sets that you've accumulated over the years of your career. That's sort of the first place that we begin. Does that help answer the question, Linda?
Yeah, it does. And that sounds like it's also, a person maybe who's a little more established, but, also if I think about first coming in franchising, maybe their corporate experience doesn't quite lend itself to the entrepreneurial skills you need to actually run a business, because you do get a lot of support, but you're still running a business as a franchisee. And how would you, like you mentioned, the cost? It is an investment. How large a buy-in is it? Is it $1 million? Is it hundreds of thousands of dollars? How is it expensive? And what other costs there is? And there's probably some time investment as well.
100%. So, Linda, the cost of a franchise varies, and it varies greatly. And it varies because of a number of different factors. So, number one, what industry is that franchise in? So, I will tell you, anytime a business requires a brick and mortar footprint, anytime it's a business that is a retail model, your investment is going to go up, obviously, because you're going to pay rent. You need space. There are different categories of franchising. One of the most cost-effective categories in franchising is what we refer to as home-based businesses.
Mm.
By its name, it means if you have a space in your home where you can set up a laptop or a computer and you have access to Wi-Fi, you're in business. It's a home-based business. There are other businesses, for example, that are not retail. So let's take restaurants. That requires a retail footprint. But there are businesses in between a home-based and one that requires a space. There may be a business that requires you, the business owner, to store the equipment needed for the business in a warehouse. That's a Class B retail. That's a different kind of model. So These different factors all contribute to the overall cost that your franchise is going to be for you.
So what I'm hearing you say when you're looking at a franchise is you're looking at a few things. You're looking at your skills. You're looking at your interests. What do you like doing, right? You're looking, what financial resources do you have available? What are your financial needs for generating revenue? And maybe the business model itself. I don't know if, operating a restaurant sounds rather complicated to me because I have no experience in that area. Running some of a service business, maybe in a more hybrid model, sounds like something maybe that I would be able to jump into more quickly. So I'm glad you are giving us some of those parameters. Is that what you help your clients assess? Do you look at all of those things?
Yes, that is what we help clients with, Linda. I will tell you that, though, is still only a very small part of the process that we help clients with. As we get you started, we make a couple of very key introductions that you are going to need down the road. We will introduce you to our funding concierge. Why? Franchise funding is very different from any other kinds of funding that you and I, as individual consumers, are used to. It is very different from a house note. It's not a mortgage. It is very different from a car note. Franchise funding can take different forms, but the particular strategy that you are going to use to fund the franchise, to buy the franchise, when we found it, is completely dependent on your specific financials. So if you have money sitting in a retirement account, for example, we can use what's known as a ROBS strategy, which essentially translates into a rollover business startup. It's a very specific type of funding. You might be, you're a homeowner and you have equity in your home and you have a couple of other things going for you. And based on that, our funding concierge says, Linda, you would be an excellent candidate for an SBA loan. And maybe that is your funding strategy. We might end up giving you a business where the investment is low enough and you are sitting on a pile of cash and you say, Faizun, I'm just going to buy the business outright and start the business debt-free. So it completely depends on your specific financials. But getting you connected with our funding concierge right out the gate does a couple of things. Number one, very much like Linda, when you and I were on the market to buy a home, one of the very first things that the broker did was they said, all right, well, let's see, what are your financials? What are we working with? Let's pre-qualify you so that, you want to buy $1 million home. We're not showing you houses that cost 3 million.
Right.
There's that disconnect. In a very similar vein, that's what we do. We get the client pre-qualified to understand, here's the parameters that we are working with. One of the things, Linda, this is our due diligence, not the client's. We want to make sure that you, the client, are not financially over leveraged the moment you get into business. You know this from the world you live in. That's a really terrible place to be in.
Yes.
We'll do what we need to do at a level that keeps you, the client, comfortable. Because the last thing you want to do when you start a new business is be laying in bed at night wondering how you're going to service the debt load. That is not a good place to be in, right? So that's one of the key things that we do, in addition to a number of things that we do with the client as we take them through the search process.
Well, that's a really great service because I think you're really on point there about not wanting to start right off the bat being carrying the debt and having to service the debt, which would make it very, very difficult to be successful. Who would not be the right fit for investing in franchise? Where in your process might you say to someone, I don't think franchising is the right model for you?
I love that question so much, Linda, more than you know. I would say a really big red flag for us is when we find a client who's not coachable. When you become a franchisee, understand that your franchisor knows about that business and about that industry far more than you do. So to be able to come to the process, to come to the table with a level of humility and an understanding that I'm going to be open to what I don't know is huge. Um, we've had many clients and they kind of work themselves out of the search process where they're not following directions or they're not showing up for calls with the brands or they are fighting us on the recommendations that we have made for them because they believe they know what they know and that's it. So, coachability, I would say, Linda, across the board is a huge thing for any and every brand that we will introduce clients to.
And it sounds like you're talking about accountability as well. And, you might be accountable to the franchisor. When you own your own business, you're still somewhat accountable to your customers, your clients, and, having your employees show up. But it is very different. And if you're not, I think I read in your book that if feel the strains of having someone having to answer to anyone, might mean you have to take a hard look at whether this is the right model for you. Before we take our commercial break, when we come back, I want to talk about some success stories. But I would say once you get past that first process of evaluating the fit, what would be the second step? And then we'll continue talking about it.
What would be the second step?
Yeah, what after you find out what they're fit first, then what happens?
So, after we take them through the process to find that fit, the second step becomes creating a short list. And at this point in time, Linda, we have an inventory of over 650 franchise brands that we partner with. So it's a massive inventory. So the second step is really culling down and creating a short list of brands that we are going to present to the client based on all the investigative discovery work that we have done on the client up to that point in time.
Great. We're going to take a commercial break and then come back and talk to Faizun more about franchising models. Welcome back to Balancing Acts. We're talking to Faizun Kamal, a franchising expert, and about her process of helping you decide if franchising is a good investment for you for starting your business. Faizun, let's talk about the process you work through people with. You have a great book that I announced in the beginning, the Finding the Right Franchise. It does talk a lot about your process, but let's start at the beginning. What is the first step in the process?
Wonderful. Yes, Linda. So we take every client through a six-step process as outlined in the book you just described. And the first step really begins with us doing a deep dive on the client to understand who they are. I tell clients, you're like an onion. I don't know you yet. And as we go through the process, I want to be able to peel back the layers of the onion that's Linda. How do we do that? And that first step really is understanding what are your likes and dislikes? What are your greatest needs? What is your biggest desire? And what are the fears that keep you up at night? What do you want the franchise to be able to give you? Because once you share that with me, maybe a franchise might not be the right option to be able to get you there, right? So it's really understanding what the client is all about. Once we do that, we then start to create a short list. This is where the fun begins. A short list of brands that we will introduce you to based on what you, the client, shared with us you're looking for. Once we do that, Linda, for the next roughly 4, 8, 12 weeks, the client goes through what's called due diligence with the brands that we've introduced them to. What is due diligence? This is where the brand rep meets with the client every week and uncovers various specific aspects of the franchise model that the client as a future franchisee needs to understand about. What's the model like? How do you go out there and get clients? How do you do business development? What kind of marketing do we expect you to do? What kind of money are you going to be making from our business? Right? It's a big thing that everyone wants to know about. There's a way you are able to get these questions answered. As we take you through what we call the due diligence process, Linda, We will make a couple of introductions for you, very key introductions. One to our funding concierge, who helps you figure out how are you actually going to fund the business once you find it. And then a very important second introduction. Franchising is a highly regulated industry, much like the industry you're in. And one of the key things that we are very proud to share with you, Linda, is the reputation that we've created in the marketplace. And one of the reasons we've been able to do that is every client that comes through our doors, we will introduce them to a franchise attorney. I'm not an attorney, but we work with some of the best franchise attorneys in the country, and we will introduce you to one. And this typically happens, Linda, as the client is almost towards the end of their due diligence process, where before you, Mr. or Mrs. Client, sign anything, put your name on any dotted lines, we would love for you to sit down with an attorney and review that franchise agreement to make sure that you are very clear-eyed about what it is you're walking into. And the franchise attorney essentially gives their perspective on, is this a franchise that seems balanced? Are they asking you, the franchisee, for things that are super onerous? Are the covenants, are the clauses in that agreement super restrictive? These are the things that the franchise attorney advises every single one of our clients on. At the end of that review, if everything looks great and the client is happy and comfortable, they will then move forward to sign that franchise agreement. And at that point in time, Linda, they have officially become a franchisee. That, in a nutshell, my friend, is the process that we take clients through.
And that process, you said, takes about 12 weeks.
That takes roughly 90 days from
90.
start. Some clients might do a little bit faster if they're more aggressive. If the client's a little bit slower, they're taking their time, we're looking at roughly 90 days.
Let's walk back a minute to something you mentioned. Once you get past, the understanding yourself and what your own needs are, to looking and talking to the brands in due diligence. Now, you mentioned business development. One thing in my experience as a CPA, having worked with small business owners for 3 decades, they struggle often with sales, with business development, unless they're a salesperson. Like if your skill is sales, you're going to excel there. Maybe you're going to struggle in other areas like marketing or maybe accounting. But if you are not good at sales, what kind of support do you get from the franchisor in business development? And are all of them equal as you look at your opportunities?
What a wonderful question, Linda. So no two franchises are created equal. So that's the first thing. But because different franchises have different business models, these models require the franchise owner to play very different roles. So one franchise might say, well, Linda, when you come into our franchise, your biggest role as the business owner is going to be in marketing. You have to make sure that everyone in the territory that you are in knows you and knows the service or the product that you offer. So your big focus is going to be marketing. So in that business, Linda, you might say, well, Mr. Mrs. Franchisor, I'm not really great at sales. It makes me a little nervous. I feel a little about it. Will this still be a fit for me? Here's the beauty of franchising. You sit in your zone of genius, whatever that zone of genius might be, Linda, and you hire to your weaknesses. So if you're not a salesperson, if you're not a marketing person, if you're not a whatever person, you are going to hire someone to come into the business to do that particular thing for you. So yes, that is one way that we do this. Keep in mind also, depending on the franchise that you are getting in with, your franchise is going to offer you support on a variety of things. They're not all going to be equal, but they're going to be on whatever that brand provides you based on the industry or the niche that they happen to be in.
And I think so. Hiring, yes, in any business, we need to hire to complement the skills that we as owners have. And that's probably not considered in the initial investment either, right? Running the business itself afterwards, would you you are considering that in your financial plans for your first investment of hiring?
You actually are, Linda. So again, when I say due diligence, my friend, I mean true due diligence. So for example, you look at the business and you say, Mr. and Mrs. Franchisor, this is wonderful. I feel like this really speaks to what I want to do. But here's the thing. I want to be able to run the business in what's called a semi-absentee fashion. What does that mean? It means I'm the business owner, yes. I am still overseeing the business, but I may not be running the business 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. How? By hiring a manager to replace me. The manager is running the day-to-day ops, and I, as the owner, am overseeing the business KPIs, key performance indicators. I am the one who's hiring. I am the one that's doing the marketing, but I am not doing the day-to-day running of the business itself. That particular business, in the total investment that they will share with you, will say, hey, Linda, this is the amount if you are going to run the business by yourself. You're the one doing the day-to-day. Now, if you want to run the business semi-absentee, you need to add another $60,000 to $80,000, whatever, right? Depending on what that salary of that person is going to be, based on whatever part of the country you might be in, or for whatever functions they would be performing. So yes, that is actually all considered into that financial investment piece before you even move forward.
But that's great. That sounds very, very thorough. Can you give us any success stories about someone who came to you, found the right franchise, and is very happy with their investment?
Yes. How much time do we have? Because I have lots of
we have 2 minutes on this one, and then we're going to have we're going to do one more segment so you can share some more success stories and we'll go further.
That's all right. That's all right. I will share with you Ben's story. No last names. Ben came to us probably, Linda, 3 years ago at this point. Absolutely delightful. It makes my coach heart happy when we get clients like this, right? Ben was a veteran, and he was at that point where he was transitioning back into civilian life. He had been in ops, and at that point in time, when he came to us, he said, look, I really feel like owning my own business, having that agency over my life is really what I need to be able to do what I need to do with my family and for my family. So that was his sort of central premise. Came to us. We took him through the process I just outlined for you. It took him, I think, a little more than 90 days. There were a number of things he was doing with his transition from military life into civilian life that added a little bit more time. He is now the franchisee in a business that does this. You will never guess this, but I'll tell you what it is. They do plastic, vinyl, and leather repair and refurbishment. So you might say, what? An ops guy? This is what he's doing? Yes, ma'am. So you remember what I said to you about every client being an onion? He was an onion. And as we peeled the layers back, it became abundantly clear to me that this might be a franchise that may be the right fit for him. And in fact, as he went through the process, and he moved fairly quickly because from I would say probably the first couple of weeks into due diligence, Linda, he knew, and he proceeded at a very fast clip. He's been in the business now roughly 3 years. I am in touch with every client I have ever placed in a business for selfish reasons. I want to know, are you doing well? Because it gives me information and feedback, right, on the brands that we have in our inventory.
Yes. And we're going to take, excuse me, but we're going to take a commercial break. But I just want to say, what a great story about a veteran, because veterans often come out of the military and they're looking to transition, and they may not do as well in corporate life, but they are used to structure. They're used to accountability, and they may need that to get started, and a franchise can provide that. We'll take a commercial break. Welcome back to Balancing Acts. We've been talking to Faizun Kamal about either being an owner of a franchise, investing in a franchise, rather than starting up a business. And now we're going to talk about maybe you have a great business, you've been running your business for years successfully, and you're ready to consider maybe scaling on a different path. So now we want to talk about possibly becoming a franchisor. Faizun, how do people come to you when they want to start thinking about that? Why do they come?
I love that, Linda. Um, a good indicator for if this may be the right path for you is if you wake up in the morning every day and you feel like your hair is on fire, where you love what you're doing, you've created an amazing product or you offer an amazing service. You might have a couple of employees in place. You have either one or more locations if you're a location-based business. And you know in the deepest corners of your heart, you want to be able to take this amazing thing you've created to people around the country. If that's you, then likely franchising may be the right path for you. Clients come to us when they're feeling this way, Linda. And once they do, we essentially walk them through what we refer to as the franchise development process. So this is where we take the business owner, we take them through a 5-month journey. And at the end of the 5 months, your business has become a national franchised brand. So that's what we do for those clients.
You know, it's interesting because both in my CPA practice, where we do help our businesses focus not just on their taxes, but on growth, on the holistic health of a business, but in my exit planning
Yes.
practice as a coach, I assess gaps. If you think you want to sell your business in the next 2 years, 3 years, we have to look at whether or not it's time to scale. How do you duplicate revenue? What is it that's going to increase your value? And franchising is one scalable model that can really make a difference and increase your value. So how would they know the business is franchisable before they come to you, or is it after they come to you?
I love that. And I'm so delighted, Linda, that you mentioned that exit planning piece. We have a client right now. She came to us 2 months ago. She's now in the 2nd month of development. When she came to us, Linda, she was crystal clear. She said, look, I am X years old, and my plan is to turn this business into a franchise, run it and grow it to X locations. And at the end of 5 years, I want to be able to sell the business. She was crystal clear about what her objective was with franchising. So yes, it's a wonderful scale strategy, but it is an amazing strategy to exponentially increase the value of the business. This is the biggest saleable asset you'll ever have, only second to your home. And sometimes it even rivals the home if you run the business properly, right? And I have forgotten the question you've asked me.
It's just, how do they know their
How do
business
they know?
might be franchisable?
Yes. How do they know if their business is franchisable? Do you offer a product or a service that you can easily replicate anywhere in the country? So, for example, if you're a business owner, Linda, and you sell slabs of ice, let's pretend. Okay, well, you would be able to likely have a very successful business in a place like Florida. But if we took you to Alaska, not so much. Is that a business that is nationally scalable? Likely not. So we are looking for businesses that have that scalability across the entire country if you want to go national, or global if your plans are to be able to expand outside of the United States. That's a big one. But I would say even before that, number one, and the answer to this question has got to be a yes. Are you running a business right now that is currently profitable?
Mm.
You cannot give me an answer that is not a yes. Because if you do, and that's fine if you do, that just means that there are certain things that we have to put in place before we can get you ready to be franchised. Because at the end of the day, any potential franchisee is only going to invest in your business if you have shown them a path to profitability. I would say those are the two biggest ones.
Exactly. And you know, that's the same. If you wanted to sell your business, you can't sell a business that has no profits, right? There has to be time. And that's why both you and I have added a coaching element to the services we offer, because there are so many questions you want to walk through with a coach. It's a safe place to walk through these gaps, the blind spots. What are the things you can fix? What's going right? What's going wrong? So I'm glad you shared that profitability and wanting to take it nationwide. Are there any more regional? So let's say it's not a nationwide. Are there any more regional franchises, or is that not really feasible?
There are. So many brands, I will tell you, we have advised many brands, many clients, based on the industry and the niche within the industry that they were in, to say, as you get going, Linda, let's not do national. Let's take a more regional approach to growth. Regional does a number of things, including it allows you to be much more efficient with your resources.
Mm.
Remember, we are always cash strapped, right? There's always a dance that we do. You know, this is a CPA. Oh my God, my numbers are not where I need them to be, right? So
Right.
it's another way for you to grow more efficiently. Plus, also keep in mind, as a young new franchisor, if you have a regional approach, and let's say you have 5 franchisees in 5 neighboring states versus 5 franchisees spread out all across the country, just from a management perspective, from the franchisor, it makes it much easier to have a regional approach. So yes, both national, regional, we've done both, we've seen both.
So how long does it take, whether regional, national, how long does it take to actually be able to franchise your business?
When a client comes in the door with us, Linda, from start to finish, soup to nuts, it's a 5-month process that we take them through. It's a 5-month process with a number of key deliverables that are aligned to what you need to be able to not just operationally, structurally, marketing wise, but in the legal sense, be able to operate as a franchise in the United States. Remember, I said to you,
Yeah.
franchising is a highly regulated industry. So there are a number of key things that we have to put in place for you before you can even say, hey, boys and girls, I'm a franchise now. 5 months.
Okay. And so that's actually at the end of 5 months, you may have actually had your franchise created.
Yes, ma'am.
That's actually pretty
5
quick.
months. It's pretty quick and it's funny. Do you know that this is one of the biggest surprises people have when they first come to us? Because they'll say, wait, what? It's not going to take me a year? No. I mean, we can drag our feet on this if you'd like us to, but no, it absolutely will not take you anywhere near a year. And again, Linda, it's one of those things, my friend. We get a lot of people who are very excited by the vision that they hold, and they come to us and we say it's going to be 5 months. Oh my gosh, I don't feel I'm ready. No one ever does. It's
Yeah.
okay. But we take you through, again, this is the due diligence that we do. If we don't feel you're at a point where you're ready to be franchised, we will tell you that. And we will lay out a game plan for you to get ready and
Mm.
then revisit us and have that conversation at that point.
And that's the coaching process, because you've already said you have to be running a profitable business. So, if you meet the criteria to be able to be franchisable, you can take it to it quickly. That's great. So does the business owner have to shut everything down while they're getting ready to franchise?
Are you looking to franchise? Because that's a question we get all the time. No, Linda. In fact, quite the opposite. What I will tell every one of our founders is, look, Linda, as you get started with us, our team is working with you on the key pieces that we are going to be delivering to you at the end of 5 months. That's roughly 3 to 5 hours of time on your end per week. The other time, we want you to continue to refine all of your SOPs, to continue to tighten and refine and do whatever you need to do, so that when we've turned you into a franchise and you're ready to sell yourself as such, you are offering just the most robust offering that you can to your potential franchisees. So no, not at all.
So talking about selling to franchisees, we're used to selling our products and services, but now we're selling something different, right? We're
Yes,
selling,
very different.
and we want to look for franchisees. So how does that work? How do we start to go out and sell the first one, or find others to buy into
Oh, I
what
love
we've
that.
created?
I love that question, Linda. That, my friend, though, is going to be a conversation for another time because it's a
Okay.
slightly longer answer. The short answer is, at this point in time, I would say probably 9 out of 10 clients, they will continue on in the process with us and begin a new engagement where we become the ones that sell their franchise, right?
Got it. Got it.
Franchise sales is very different from what you as the business owner have done for the last X years.
Yes, yes, yes.
Two very different skill sets.
Yes.
And of course, the client can choose to go and sell on their own if that's what they wish to do.
And we will have you back to talk about that. So what would be your tips for someone who wants to now, who's listening to this, who really wants to start thinking about being able to turn their business into a franchise? What would be your top 3 tips for them?
Can I start with this? Because this is, I think, it's something that certainly we saw in the business. If you as the business owner, if you've been able to successfully survive, and not just survive, thrive through the pandemic, because it's something that none of us ever expected would happen. We were not at all prepared for it. And if as a business owner, you were able to withstand that, and you came out of it standing and you came out of it stronger, please reach out to us because you have something. You really do. You really do. I would say reach out to us, schedule a discovery session with us. It's really that first step. If you don't feel ready, schedule a discovery call with us, because when you do, we will actually do the deep dive into your business and say, Linda, you're right. Here would be the 3 areas that you might want to focus on. And then let's have you come back and let's revisit this conversation in 6 months, in 9 months, in a year. But then that way you have a plan as you move forward if franchising was ever on the radar for you. So that would really be the big thing that I would share.
Excellent advice. And I do believe that doing a discovery call can be beneficial. I do them myself for exit planning assessments. How can people find you, find more about you if they want to learn more?
Absolutely. The best place would be our website, thefranchisepros.net, not .com, .net. And I live on LinkedIn, as you know, and I have been told, I don't know this for a fact, but I have been told that there's only one Faizun Kamal on all of LinkedIn, so I shouldn't be super difficult to find. Reach out, connect. I'm always delighted, like I said to you, connecting with people who have amazing businesses that they're running. Reach out, let's connect. There's a lot of opportunity in the world we live in right now, Linda. It's what excites me in the work that we do every day.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. It was my pleasure to talk with you. I can't wait to have you come back and talk more about some of the other things. I, for one, am going to look at the franchise model. I think it's fascinating that Faizun shared both the perspective of being a franchisee and franchisor, and it will give you the accountability you might need to build a very profitable, resilient business, and absolutely a model that can be scalable. So check out what Faizun shared and consider booking a discovery call. I think I may. Join us again next week for another episode of Balancing Acts.
Thanks, Linda.
This has been a Now Media Networks feature presentation. All rights reserved.